I'm going to be completely real with you to start this off. When I opened the shared drive this morning and I saw the topic file you uploaded, I had a physical reaction.
Oh no.
And it was not a good one. I actually closed my laptop, and for a second, I considered just going back to bed.
That is a very visceral response. I'm
Yeah.
going to assume the title of the folder had something to do with it.
Twin flames. It was just those two words, twin flames. It immediately triggered my internal spam filter. It's
What was
cringe.
it?
It conjures up this very specific, very messy corner of the internet, like intense astrology TikToks, obsession, people convincing themselves that a toxic, volatile relationship is actually cosmic destiny. It just feels like the ultimate excuse.
I completely 100% understand that reaction. And honestly,
Yeah.
if we were looking at the pop culture version of this,
Yeah.
the whole fairy tale, other half of my soul narrative, I would have skipped it too.
Right.
It's so often used as a spiritual bypass to avoid dealing with, well, with reality.
Exactly. Like, oh, he didn't ghost me. He's just running because our connection is too powerful for the 3D world. Just give me a break.
Precisely. That is exactly what we are not doing today.
Okay.
The reason I fought for this topic is because the source material I found actually takes a sledgehammer to that entire narrative. It strips away all the mysticism and looks at this concept through a brutal psychological lens.
And that is the only reason I'm still sitting here. Because once I actually read the brief, I realized, oh, this isn't about romance at all. It's about psychology. It frames twin flames not as a relationship goal, but as a mechanism for what the author calls radical mirroring.
That is the mission for this deep dive. We are pivoting away from the idea of romantic destiny or, a wedding guarantee.
Yeah.
We are analyzing this as a mechanism of self-confrontation.
Right.
This isn't about finding someone to save you. It's about encountering a dynamic that forces you to save yourself.
Which is a much scarier prospect,
Yeah.
honestly.
It is. So we're going to explore why we mistake that, biological intensity for love, the concept of the unintegrated self, and why this source argues that the only way to survive this kind of connection is something called self-fidelity.
Well, I've got my skeptic hat on, but I'm listening.
That's it.
So let's start with part one, radical mirroring and the myth of completion. Because I think we have to address the elephant in the room, the Jerry Maguire line.
Yeah, complete me.
The most famous line in romantic history, and it's just terrible advice, isn't it? We walk around feeling like a half circle, looking for the plug that fits our socket. But this source suggests that if you go into a connection looking to be completed, you're already doomed.
It doesn't just suggest it, it states it as a psychological fact. The text says, and I'm paraphrasing here, twin flame love is real self-love. Not because another person completes you, but because the experience forces you to meet yourself without escape.
Without escape. That sounds less like a rom-com and more like a
A hostage situation.
hostage situation, yeah.
In the beginning, it can often feel like one. And this connects to the core concept here, radical mirroring. So think about a normal relationship. It's like a standard bathroom mirror. You check your hair, you see the version of yourself you present to the world, and you move on.
Right. I see my good side. I check for spinach.
Exactly. This dynamic is different. The source describes it as a high-definition mirror with a spotlight attached. This person doesn't just reflect your persona. They reflect your patterns, your deepest wounds, your hidden strengths, and your defenses with unusual clarity.
Okay, but isn't that just intimacy? I mean, isn't the whole point of love that you see the real person?
Yes, but usually intimacy is a slow burn. You peel back the layers over years.
Sure.
The source argues that in this specific dynamic, the masks simply malfunction from day one. You are seen instantly, and not just the parts you want to show. The parts you've been hiding, even from yourself, are reflected right back at you.
And I'm guessing that's where the so-called intensity comes from. Because I think this is where people get tripped up. You meet someone, you feel this insane magnetic pull, your heart is racing, and you think, wow, this is passion. This must be true love.
And that is the most dangerous misinterpretation. The source makes a distinction here that I think is absolutely critical. It says that the intensity is not the love.
So what is it?
It is the exposure.
The exposure.
Yeah. I mean, think about the biology of it. When you feel butterflies or that breathless sensation, what is your body actually doing? It's a sympathetic nervous system response. It's fight or flight. You are being stripped bare and your body is registering that exposure as a threat to the ego.
So when we say I'm breathless without you, we might actually mean my amygdala is panicking because I feel completely unsafe and exposed.
Roughly, yes. The source argues that what people call twin flame love often begins as, attraction or fascination.
Yeah.
But the differentiator, the thing that separates it from just a really intense crush, is self-confrontation. It shifts the entire dynamic from romance to work.
It sounds exhausting.
It is work. It's not about gazing into each other's eyes. It's about gazing into the mirror that the other person provides.
Which brings us to part 2, what lies beneath. If this is a mirror, and if it's about exposure, what exactly is being exposed? Because usually we're pretty good at hiding our baggage.
That's the unintegrated self. The source provides a whole laundry list of things that this connection drags to the surface. These are the aspects of your psyche that you have, exiled or suppressed just to survive.
Okay, lay it on me. What's on the list?
Attachment styles, fear of abandonment, fear of intimacy, deep-seated self-doubt, and a phrase that I found really fascinating, unclaimed desire.
Unclaimed desire. That sounds poetic, but what does it actually mean in this context?
It refers to the parts of yourself you are afraid to embody. So let's say you've spent your whole life being the responsible one. You're rigid, you're organized, you're safe. You might meet someone who represents pure chaos, freedom, creativity. You are drawn to them not just because you like them, but because they are holding the desire for freedom that you haven't claimed for yourself.
Oh, that makes so much sense. You're trying to acquire that trait by acquiring the person?
Exactly. But because these deep primal wounds and desires are surfacing through another person, the whole experience becomes overwhelming. And the source explains that this removes the ability to project blame outward.
Hang on, let's unpack that. Projecting blame outward that's the default setting for most conflicts. I'm mad because you were late. I'm sad because you forgot my birthday.
And in a normal dynamic, that logic holds up. But in this dynamic of radical mirroring, the source argues the reflection is so clear that you are forced to realize the pain isn't coming from them. It's coming from your own unhealed wound that they just happen to trigger.
So you can't say you're making me feel abandoned. You have to look at, why is my fear of abandonment so massive that a delayed text message can just destroy my entire day?
Correct. You are forced to own the reaction. And that is incredibly destabilizing. In fact, the source outlines what I call the destabilization triad. There are 3 specific ways people try to handle this intensity, and the source warns that all of them lead to collapse.
I want to go through these carefully because as I was reading this, I felt very called out. I think everyone has done at least one of these. What's the first one?
First failure state is if you abandon yourself, the connection destabilizes.
This is the classic people pleaser move. I twist myself into a pretzel to keep the peace. I stop voicing my needs because I'm afraid you'll leave if I'm too much.
Right. But think about the mirror analogy again.
Yeah.
If you abandon yourself, if you make yourself small or invisible, there is nothing left to reflect.
Oh.
The connection requires 2 solids. If you become a liquid to fit their container, the dynamic fails because there's no you left to relate to.
That's a powerful image. Okay, what's number 2?
If you try to use the other for validation, it fragments.
This goes right back to the you complete me myth. Using the partner as a drug. Tell me I'm pretty, tell me I'm worthy, please fix my self-esteem.
It's outsourcing your internal infrastructure. The source says this fragments the connection because it places a burden on the other person that no human can possibly carry. They cannot be the sole source of your worthiness. It just creates a crushing weight.
And the third one, this was the one that hit hardest for me.
If you attempt to possess, it collapses.
This is the instinct to grip. When we feel that intense connection, our primal brain just says, lock this down. We want to own the person. We want to control the outcome.
And that grasping mechanism is completely fear-based. It's the fear of loss acting out. But the source uses this beautiful, slightly violent image here. It says you cannot possess a mirror. You can only look into it. If you try to grab the reflection, if you try to strangle the image to keep it still, you just break the glass.
Wow. That is visceral, breaking the glass because you're trying to hold on to the reflection.
It's the paradox of control, right? The tighter you grip, the more likely you are to shatter the very thing you value.
So this paints a pretty chaotic picture. You've got all your deepest fears surfacing, you can't blame the other person, and if you try to fix it by grasping or pleasing or demanding validation, it blows up in your face. It sounds like a trap. Why would anyone want this?
Well, if you view it through the lens of a romantic fairy tale, it is a trap. It's a nightmare. But if you view it through the lens of psychological growth, it's a crucible. It's designed to burn away everything that isn't really you. And that brings us to the only solution the source offers.
Part 3. Redefining self-love as self-fidelity. So if everything we normally do causes the connection to collapse, what actually keeps it alive?
The source gives a one-word answer: self-presence.
Which sounds nice, very mindfulness-y, but it's a little abstract.
It is, until the text drills down. It really redefines self-love. And I appreciate this because self-love has become such a watered-down buzzword. It usually implies bubble baths or treating yourself to dinner or positive affirmations.
Self-care.
Exactly. But here, the source defines self-love not as affirmation or indulgence, but as self-fidelity.
Self-fidelity. That sounds like a vow, like a marriage vow, but to yourself.
It is a vow. It means staying loyal to your own reality, your own needs, your own values, even when the external pressure to fold is enormous.
But what does that look like in the trenches? Because it's easy to say be true to yourself when you're single and happy. But when you're in the middle of this emotional storm and you're terrified that if you speak up, this twin flame will run away, how do you practice self-fidelity then?
So the source breaks it down into actionable behaviors. First, it means staying with your own truth, even when it's uncomfortable. But the second one is the real challenge: maintaining boundaries even when longing is strong.
Even when longing is strong, that is the hardest thing to do. When you want nothing more than to merge with this person, holding a boundary feels like cutting off a limb.
It does. It feels completely counterintuitive. Your body is screaming, go to them, fix it, chase them, but your wisdom knows this isn't healthy right now. Self-fidelity is listening to the wisdom, not the scream.
The source had a great phrase for this: choosing coherence over obsession.
Yes, coherence over obsession.
Can you define coherence in this context for me?
Coherence is the state where your nervous system is actually regulated. You feel grounded, clear, and safe in your own body. Obsession is the dopamine hit, the highs and lows, the anxiety, the racing thoughts. Choosing coherence means you prioritize your own sanity over the high of the connection.
And the source says this leads to listening to the nervous system rather than the fantasy.
That is the key. The fantasy says we are soulmates. This is destiny. We're meant to be together forever. The nervous system says, I'm not sleeping. My stomach hurts. I am constantly checking my phone. I am in a state of high alert.
And we culturally misinterpret that high alert as passion. We think, oh, I can't eat, I can't sleep, I must be in love.
We do. But self-fidelity means looking at that physiological panic and admitting this is not safety. This is dysregulation. It means prioritizing your own regulation over the narrative.
And here is the shift that really surprised me. The source claims that when you start doing this, when you practice self-fidelity and you stop abandoning yourself, the role of the other person changes.
It changes completely. The text says the other stops being a fixation and becomes a mirror that no longer needs to be stared into.
No longer needs to be stared into. That implies that once you see what's in the reflection, once you see the wound, the fear, the pattern, and you actually deal with it, you don't need the mirror anymore.
Precisely. If you use a mirror to check if you have spinach in your teeth, once you remove the spinach, you don't keep standing there staring at the mirror for 4 hours. You go about your day. The obsession lifts because the work is done.
This leads us perfectly to part 4, outcomes and integration. Because I'm sure the listener is wondering, and I'm wondering, okay, I do the work, I practice self-fidelity, I integrate the shadow. What is the payoff? Do I get the person? Do we ride off into the sunset?
Laughs. The eternal question, does the magic spell work?
I mean, we're human. We want the happy ending.
Well, the source redefines what a happy ending even is. It states explicitly, twin flame love is not measured by union. It is measured by integration.
Okay, that is a hard pivot, not measured by union. So you can have a successful twin flame experience and never speak to the person again.
Yes. The source outlines 2 valid, successful paths. Once the lesson integrates, the connection either 1 becomes calm, mutual, and grounded, or 2 releases naturally.
And both are considered success.
Both are success. Because the goal wasn't to acquire a partner. The goal was to return to yourself. The source says if the experience leads you back to yourself, more honest, more regulated, more whole, then it has done its job.
That is a really bitter pill to swallow for the romantics out there. It essentially says the relationship is a vehicle, not the destination.
It's a vehicle for evolution. And this addresses the suffering aspect. We touched on this earlier, but there's a massive tendency in these online communities to glorify the pain, this idea of the runner and the chaser.
Right, the tortured poet vibe. Like the pain is proof of the depth. We fight and break up constantly because our fire is too strong for this world.
And the source corrects that narrative very, very sternly. It says, suffering is not the point. Suffering is a signal that self-love is being bypassed.
That needs to be on a billboard. Suffering is a signal that self-love is being bypassed.
It continues. True self-love does not chase what destabilizes it. It does not negotiate against its own boundaries. It does not confuse intensity with intimacy.
So if you are suffering, it's not because the connection is high vibration or 5D, it's because you are abandoning yourself in the 3D.
Correct. And when self-love is truly present, the mirror no longer wounds. It clarifies.
I really like that description. So let's paint a picture of what it looks like when it's actually working, when it's healthy, because we've talked a lot about the dysfunction.
The source lists 3 markers of the mature expression of this dynamic. First, deep recognition without dependence.
So I see you, I know you, but I don't need you to survive.
Exactly. I want you, but I will be okay without you. Dependence is fear. Recognition is love. Second, closeness without self-loss.
Which is the opposite of that you complete me thing. It's 2 whole circles overlapping, not 2 broken halves trying to glue themselves together.
And third, love without self-abandonment.
Love without self-abandonment, that feels like the ultimate goal of any relationship, really, not just this twin flame concept.
It really is, and I think that's why the source is so valuable, even if you don't believe in the spiritual side of it. Even if you think the term twin flame is absolute nonsense, the framework moving from codependency, I need you to be okay, to autonomy, I am okay so I can love you freely, is universal.
It's just a blueprint for adult relationships.
It is. It's simply growing up.
So as we wrap this up, I want to circle back to the biggest twist for me. We started this talking about twin flames, which implies 2 people. A twin implies a pair. But by the end of this text, the focus has shifted entirely away from the couple.
It has. The final twist is that the twin isn't really about the other person at all.
The source says the twin is actually what?
It is the part of you that could not be ignored anymore.
That gives me chills. The person you were obsessing over, the person you thought was your destiny, they were just the delivery system for the parts of yourself you were ignoring.
They were the external manifestation of an internal need. The source concludes with this beautiful idea. Twin flame love is real because self-love is real. And the moment self-love is embodied, the flame stops burning and starts illuminating.
The flame stops burning and starts illuminating. I think that is the perfect summary. We usually associate fire with consumption being consumed by love. But this is saying the goal isn't to be consumed. The goal is to see clearly.
To see yourself clearly. To wake up.
So no more burning down the house in the name of love.
Preferably not. Illumination is much more sustainable than a wildfire. And much, much easier on the nervous system.
I agree. This has been a fascinating ride-way, more psychological than I expected. It really forces you to take responsibility for your own heart, doesn't it?
It removes the victimhood. You aren't a victim of love. You are a student of it.
Well, thank you for walking us through this. It's definitely changed how I view those internet memes. I might still roll my eyes, but I'll have a little more context now.
Before we go, I want to leave our listener with a question. We've talked a lot about mirrors and reflections today. So here is something to think about. If you stopped looking for the person who completes you and started looking for the parts of yourself you've been avoiding, who would you actually see in the mirror?
That is a big question. Something to mull over. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
See you next time.